Have you ever felt so completely drained that you feel like you have absolutely nothing left to give? Yeah, that deep, profound feeling of exhaustion. We all know the word for it: burnout. But what if the way we think about it, like an empty battery that just needs a good recharge? What if that's all wrong? Okay, let's really get into this. First, just to get a sense of the scale here, look at this number: $187 billion. That is the estimated annual cost of work-related stress just in the Western world. We're talking about everything from sick leave to lost productivity. This isn't just a personal feeling, it's a massive economic issue with a very real human cost. Right, because this isn't just about feeling tired after a long week. No, we're talking about a level of severe, long-term stress that's becoming a huge problem. So big, in fact, that in some places, it now has its very own formal medical diagnosis. So over in Sweden, they actually have a specific medical term for this: stress-induced exhaustion disorder. And the definition is key here. It's a state of debilitating exhaustion caused by at least 6 months of nonstop stress. It's become one of the top reasons for long-term sick leave, which just goes to show you how seriously this is being taken now. So, how do we usually try to explain this intense feeling of being totally and completely spent? Well, that brings us to the most common and, the most intuitive explanation out there. You've probably said this yourself, right? My batteries are just dead. It might sound like a casual thing to say, but get this: it's so common that it's actually an item on clinical burnout questionnaires. It just perfectly sums up the mainstream theory that burnout is what happens when our psychophysiological resources are just gone, depleted. And this comparison from some prominent researchers really hammers it home. They describe it as being like a broken car battery that cannot be recharged. And if you think about it that way, if you really accept that metaphor, well, the treatment seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? You just need to stop, rest, and recharge. But what if it's not that simple? What if this very metaphor, as simple and satisfying as it sounds, is actually part of the problem? What if it's keeping us from seeing the real root of exhaustion, and because of that, preventing us from finding a real, lasting solution? Okay, so let's really break this empty battery idea down. Let's look at where it even came from and explore some of the, unintended consequences it might be having. This whole idea of us being like a depleted machine, it's not new, not by a long shot. Way back in 1869, a condition called neurasthenia was called the disease of our time, and even then, doctors were comparing people to exhausted batteries. The word burnout popped up in the 70s, and then that formal diagnosis in 2005. So the point is, this isn't some cutting-edge scientific discovery. It's a metaphor that's been hanging around for over 150 years. And here is one of the biggest problems with that battery metaphor. If you see stress as something that purely drains your resources, you start to fear it. It can lead to what some folks call stress phobia. But here's the thing: tons of research shows that our mindset about stress really, really matters. Having a positive view, seeing stress as a challenge that helps you grow, is actually linked to much better health outcomes. Okay, so if burnout isn't an empty battery, then what in the world is it? Let's explore a really powerful alternative idea, one that reframes exhaustion not as a resource problem, but as a crisis of engagement. This right here is the absolute core of it. Deep, profound exhaustion isn't about running out of fuel. It's the psychological fallout from a long-term, deep mismatch between what you do every day and what you fundamentally find meaningful. It's the incredible strain of living a life that just doesn't feel like your own. So, how does this actually happen? Well, it usually starts with persistent demands. All the shoulds and musts coming from outside and inside. Over time, that creates this growing disconnect from your own core values. And to cope with that discomfort, you might start using strategies like perfectionism or just working harder, which, ironically, just creates even more stress. And eventually, your very identity, your sense of self, gets all tangled up in just meeting those demands, pulling you farther and farther away from a life that actually matters to you. So this new way of looking at it completely flips the script on what it means to get better. The focus shifts from this passive idea of recovery to an active process of re-engagement with a meaningful life. This table just lays it out so perfectly. The old way, the recovery path, its metaphor is recharging a battery. The whole focus is on avoiding stress, and the goal is just to restore your energy. But the new way, re-engagement, its metaphor is choosing a destination. Here, the focus is on approaching meaning, and the goal is to live a life you value, even when stress is there. Because, let's be honest, a meaningful life is almost never stress-free. Now, the key skill that this whole new approach is trying to build is something called psychological flexibility. And think of it this way, it's not about getting rid of stress or difficult thoughts. It's about learning how to move toward what's important to you, even when all that difficult stuff shows up. It's about being the driver of your own life, not just a passenger getting knocked around. But is this just a nice theory, or does it actually work? Well, this is where the data gets so exciting. This slide shows the results from a study on a new treatment based on this exact model. Take a look at those two graphs. On the left, you see exhaustion symptoms going down over 12 weeks. And on the right, psychological flexibility goes up. It's a clear, powerful, inverse relationship. As people got better at living by their values, their exhaustion literally went down. So we end up right back where we started, but now with a whole new perspective. Is that feeling of burnout really a sign that your battery is empty? Or could it be a signal? A signal that maybe you've been driving really hard and really fast, but in a direction that doesn't actually line up with the destination you truly want to reach. Just reframing that question might be the most important first step toward finding the right path forward.